Hello, I'm Hannah and welcome to my podcast, Don't Tell Me to Relax, the antidote to unhelpful fertility information. I'm a fertility acupuncturist and educator, and this podcast aims to empower and inform you about your menstrual cycle and your fertility. It's basically all that information you didn't get in sex education at school, with the aim of helping you improve your reproductive health and increase your chances of conception. Hello, and welcome to episode 8. This is, I'm sad to say, the last episode in this series. We're going to go on a little tiny break while we go and do some work on other stuff for a while, but we will come back. Probably, in fact, we've not actually discussed it, have we?
No.
But I'm sort of thinking we'll come back end of March, April, when I finish my course. Maybe after Easter, something like that. A spring version, a spring series 2.
Great, I'm here for it. I love doing this.
So this episode, we put out a question around, basically a question around any questions that you might have. And we got loads of responses, and we are going to try and go through as many as possible today. I don't think we can do them all. And if we can't respond to you on this podcast, then we will get in contact with you and try and get a response to you through Instagram or by email. So, Katie, would you like to start with a question for me?
Absolutely. So, first question is, I've been listening to your podcast and finding it super helpful. Thanks. And I'm 32 and have recently been diagnosed as having peri-menopause. I've had irregular periods for the past year and I'm trying to regulate them. I guess my question is something around TTC, so trying to conceive, and peri-menopause, and on tips on how to support this follicle growth and stimulation naturally.
Yes, interesting and quite a complicated picture, I would say, because you're actually very, very young to be diagnosed with peri-menopause. So I would say that this is in the camp of sort of primary ovarian failure, so early menopause. And it's a complicated picture because obviously your hormones are sort of where the hormones would be for a 45 plus year old person. So it makes it harder to conceive because your FSH can be high, your follicle stimulating hormone. It can impact your estrogen levels, and it can have an impact on your egg quality. So it can be a really complicated picture. That said, you are, being young and being, at the age of 32, there is, genetically speaking, hopefully, and you never know because there is no test for egg quality, but you would hope that egg quality might not be as compromised as if you had those results and you were in your late 40s, for example. And this is why fertility is so complicated and why you really have to look at the individual, because every person is different and every experience is different. But I would say that, if you want to really support your follicular development, then it's all about the lifestyle and the support that we talk about frequently. So it's about making sure you have good nutrition, good regular meetings, eating, lots and lots of good supplementation. We would always recommend working with a nutritionist to really give you that specific advice and information given your personal circumstances. And then we look at things like really good sleep, because we know that's good for hormone production, regulating your exercise, reducing stress, seeking support, because obviously it sounds like it could be quite a stressful situation. So seeking support from somebody like myself or Katie, getting all the help that you possibly can to give yourself the best possible chance would be my advice. Katie, have you got anything you want to add? Anything that I've missed?
I think, no, you've not really missed anything there. I think just something, again, like banging our drum of tracking your cycle and making sure that you're aware of when you have cervical mucus, and maybe like we've said about before, doing BBT for a few cycles, just so you've got that information of kind of like if you are ovulating and be able to confirm that, because that's going to be really helpful if you are trying to conceive. A pregnancy is possible in any cycle, provided ovulation happens. So whilst we're always talking about giving you the best chance and you having the best cycle you can and making everything as optimal as possible, tracking and understanding that you are ovulating and when that's happening is going to be really crucial in your journey if you are trying to conceive.
Yeah, that's right. Because even if you have an irregular cycle, obviously that's an impairment to fertility, because obviously the less you ovulate, the fewer chances you have. But it doesn't mean it's impossible. And exactly like you say, if you know that you are potentially fertile and you know your mucus, then it means that you're less likely to miss it. So yeah, absolutely. Tracking your cycle is a really important part of that. So I have one for you, Katie. Cervical position. What does it mean? And is a slow rising BBT a problem in the luteal phase? So BBT is basal body temperature charting. So is a slow rising BBT a problem in the luteal phase if your luteal phase is 12 to 13 days? So I think there's two bits to the question there. Cervical position, slow rising temperature.
Great. So cervical position. So as you move through your menstrual cycle, the position and texture of your cervix will change. So in that part of your cycle, that fertile part where you're making cervical mucus, your cervical position is going to be much higher up the vaginal canal. It's going to be feel more open. It will be like softer in its texture, and there may be like a slight tilt to it as well. So there's kind of 4 things that you're feeling for there. I generally say to people, you're probably going to feel 2 out of the 4 maybe, and just because we're all built differently. So like maybe just trying to feel for like 2 of those different things. So like the height, the texture, how open or closed it feels, and if there's any kind of like tilt to it. Whereas after you ovulate, it's going to feel much lower down. It's going to feel harder, and it will feel more closed. So a good kind of way that people describe the texture and like the feeling of it, because it's a bit kind of like hard to get your head around until you've felt it yourself. But when it feels harder in that infertile part of your cycles, it feels more like the end of your nose. Whereas in the fertile part of your cycle, it feels more like when your like lips are gently pressed together and you were to put your finger on them. So that kind of softer, fuller texture. So that's kind of what cervical position means throughout the menstrual cycle. Then in terms of BBT and there being a slow rise, if it's like 12 to 14 days in length, I wouldn't say it's a problem. I mean, in an ideal cycle, we'd like to see it go up within like a day or 2 ovulating and then stay up, and it not be this like slow gradual incline. But so long as your temperature's going up and staying up, and then like you say, it's about 12 to 13 days in length, that still sounds like a pretty good luteal phase to me.
Great. Thank you. Super, super helpful. Who knew? End of your nose.
Yeah. Yeah. So apparently if you give it a little press.
Yeah, I never knew that.
Yeah, apparently so. So, yeah. So I've got one for you, which is top 3 tips for sperm health.
Good question. I mean, my first top tip for sperm health is obviously not smoking. So smoking, and this includes vaping, is possibly the most toxic sperm destroying thing that you can do. So that is my number 1 top tip. My number 2 would be, again, around the lifestyle stuff. So around alcohol and drugs, again, really do have a massive impact on sperm health. So whether this is smoking weed, taking coke, doing E's, drinking, binge drinking, it really is going to impact your sperm, not only the quality, but the DNA, so the genetic makeup of that sperm. So, lifestyle in terms of smoking, drinking, partying, basically can have an impact. So that's 2. And my 3, I mean, can I do 4?
Yeah.
So my third one would be around nutrition. So nutrition is so important, and it's really, clear and scientifically proven that a good diet can really have a massive impact on sperm. And the thing about sperm, unlike egg quality, that we have to remember is that sperm is continuously being made in the body. So it's important, so you can have a really immediate impact of a positive outcome by having a really good, rich diet that's full of nutrients and good quality food. And obviously staying really well hydrated is also really important. So that's my third. And my 4th is around heat. So avoiding heat exposure. So, like saunas, steam rooms, tight clothing. Cycling is up for debate, but there is definitely something around tight shorts and cycling and doing that for a long time that can have an impact. So working in kitchens, looking at what your lifestyle is and what your job is can really, really impact it. So they are my 4 top tips for sperm health. Oh, you got a bonus
Lovely.
for free.
Great. I hadn't thought about working in kitchens and stuff. I was like, yeah, that makes perfect sense.
I have seen it a number of times in clinic where you find out that the person's partner, because obviously it's usually the woman that you see in clinic, works in a kitchen. And I'm sure if you did a study into it, working in a kitchen has got to be one of the most sort of sperm unfriendly environments, because it's hot. You're standing up all day. It's a stressful situation. It's really, I'm sure it doesn't happen to everybody, but I think it's definitely something to consider.
Yeah, definitely. I used to work in a restaurant, and the kitchen there was fast paced.
Yeah. And they're just always so hot, aren't they? You're near ovens.
Yeah.
Oh, hot oven on a hot day.
When we had those heat waves before, the kitchens were nearly 50 degrees.
Yeah. And that is the biggest, it literally just kills the sperm. That's why the testicles are outside the body, because they're keeping the sperm at an optimal level for fertility. That's it's a clever bit of biology there. So, if you put in those testicles in hot pants, it's kind of going against.
Get your hot pants on.
It's going against what nature intended. That nature intended them to be swinging free in the breeze. That's how I like to think about it.
Oh, brilliant. That's what I don't like to think about them much at all, but that's for different reasons.
Okay, so progesterone. It's always a big topic, isn't it? Progesterone. What the bloody hell can we do about progesterone? So one of the questions is, should you be supplementing if you're concerned about low progesterone levels? So we don't know whether this person means supplementing as in using nutritional supplements, or whether they mean supplementing as in using synthetic supplementation. So we're going to cover both. We're going to have a little chip in, both of us. So do you want to...
Little chat.
Yeah, do you want to... Oh, and we also got another question around spotting, didn't we? Spotting in the luteal phase, which
we did.
Sort of links in with progesterone. So do you want to kick off, Katie, and then I'll chip in?
Yeah. So with progesterone supporting your luteal phase, again, the lifestyle stuff really, really comes into it. So making sure you've got that nailed down first. You can't supplement your way out of not sleeping enough, not eating enough, being mega stressed out. So making sure that you've got those bits down, and that you've got really good diet, lots of protein sources. You're sleeping really well, you're looking after yourself as best you can for most of the time, and then looking at supplementation. So I know a lot of the B vitamins are really good with supporting progesterone. Magnesium I know can be a really good one as well. I'm trying to think off the top of my head, I can't think what else. There's another one.
I think vitamins. There's all kinds of different stuff. This is the thing. If you look at
so many
supplements to support progesterone, there is a massive long list that comes up. And again, I guess this goes back to vitamin what we say a lot. Vitamin C, definitely. Yeah. But again, it really depends on what your diet's like. How much fruit and veg you're eating. Really, getting it from your diet more than relying on supplements.
Food first,
as you say.
Definitely food first.
And getting help from a nutritionist that is specific and tailored to you is, I think, really helpful.
Yeah, clued up in fertility. Yeah. And then they can help you with your specific circumstance and whatever it is that you need as well, because often they'll run nutrient panels and be able to see what you're deficient in as well. Because that's the one thing with supplements is you could be taking all sorts of stuff going off the back of what someone suggested, but it might not actually be what the thing that you're needing is. So getting that kind of one-to-one support can be very, very beneficial. And then did you want to speak about kind of supplementing with synthetic or the bioidentical progesterone? Yes,
because this is an area that is really difficult, because we see so many people in clinic who have progesterone issues, and they might not necessarily be ready to start IVF. They might not want to do IVF, but they definitely have got like spotting before their period comes. They've got short luteal phases. And what we find in clinic is it's really, really difficult for people to find a way to support with progesterone. And I'm of the opinion that trying cyclogest and supporting your luteal phase is a good idea, because, you know, I just can't think what the downside would be of giving extra support to your luteal phase if you're trying to conceive and that is an issue, and it could be a barrier. And I know it's difficult because you never quite know why someone is struggling to conceive, but I think it can only really help support. And I think it's a good halfway house when you're not ready to try IVF yet, but you've been trying to conceive for a certain amount of time. I think it can really be beneficial. I know that there are guidelines if you've had repeat miscarriage that, you know, you can supplement, but often this is not in the luteal phase. This is once you have achieved a pregnancy. So again, you know, if you are struggling in that luteal phase, it's really difficult because you're sort of falling into the gap of, you know, not able to conceive because that luteal phase is deficient. So it's a controversial area, and it's one that I really want to get to the bottom of, to try and find ways to help support people. And, you know, I'm currently looking into it as we speak, trying to find a way where we can find the way for people to get prescriptions, because it's very difficult. Although some people have managed to get it through their GP. Somebody messaged me recently and they had managed to get it through their GP, but it seems really inconsistent. And that's what we would ideally like, is to have a consistent method for people to be able to access it, to give it a try, just to see if it can help. But until that point, I think, like exactly like you said, looking at all the natural ways to support your luteal phase and to support your progesterone levels is really important. And not forgetting to always go back to the beginning and look at your follicular development. So look at what is happening in that first half of your menstrual cycle, because good follicular development and a good follicle leads to a good corpus luteum, which leads to good levels of progesterone. So I know, you know, it's not always, I know you've got to look at the first half and the second half in, you know, relationship to each other, and you can't always supplement your way out of it, because, you know, you want that good follicular development, because that's involved with good egg development and all of that kind of knock-on effect that happens from that. So, you know, making sure that you've checked your thyroid, making sure your vitamin D levels are okay, making sure that you're sleeping in the first half of your menstrual cycle, you know, making sure that your stress levels are reduced to really help with that hypothalamus pituitary ovarian axis, which is going to keep those hormones working really well, I think is a good way to help support your progesterone as well.
Brilliant. Not got a lot to add to that, just in terms of the question of spotting and progesterone.
Yeah.
So I'll just briefly speak about that. So we had a question about, like, what does it mean if you get spotting kind of like a week before your period, but your luteal phase is kind of, I think they said it was like 13 or 14 days. So like of like the right kind of length. And spotting in that week before your period is like a real typical indicator that there is a progesterone issue. So doing all the things that we've just discussed is going to be what you want to be looking at if you are someone that's getting spotting in the lead up to your period, because as we said, that is a real kind of telltale sign of a low progesterone issue. So yeah, just getting everything nailed down, supplementing where you need to, and just, yeah, really looking after yourself the whole way through the cycle, because one area completely feeds into the other with this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hannah, I've got a question for you, which is, how about fertility at 40 years old and over?
Interesting. It's an interesting question, isn't it? Because the problem is, as you get older, is that the fact is that the viability of the eggs to be fertilized becomes less as you get older. So when you're in your 20s, across the course of a year, let's say, probably, you know, if you have 12 ovulations, probably 80-90% of those ovulations are potentially fertile, because the genetic makeup of your eggs are good enough to be fertilized and good enough to go on to be a pregnancy. But when you get into your 40s, late 30s, early 40s, that switch really changes. And it's sort of estimated that it kind of goes to 20% of your eggs 10% of your eggs are going to be genetically viable to be fertilized and go on to be a healthy and successful pregnancy. So it's that kind of, it's not that you cannot achieve a pregnancy, it's just that it's harder. And the thing is that, as we talk about a lot, there is no test for egg quality. The test for egg quality at the moment, as science stands, is whether you get pregnant and whether that pregnancy goes on to be a successful pregnancy. So it's really difficult to predict. And so it's about looking at all the things that we can measure. So it's about looking at your AMH, it's about looking at your FSH, it's about having a transvaginal scan, looking at your ovaries, looking at how many follicles you have on your ovaries. And I guess, talking about all the things that we always discuss around lifestyle, diet, nutrition, making sure that your partner's sperm is tip top quality to give yourself the best possible chance. And IVF statistics are, I can't remember at what point it changes. I think early 40s, it might be similar. I can't really remember, but there is, a statistic around your chances with IVF and your chances with conception naturally. I mean, obviously it depends on what the situation is, are usually around the same once you get past 40, 41, 42. So I guess if you're trying to conceive naturally, it's about making sure when you're about to ovulate, you're not missing any of your fertile windows, and you're maximizing your chances each month, and you're controlling everything that you can possibly control, and having an awareness that people do get pregnant, but it often takes longer. And I think the average is 2 years to conceive over the age of 40, sort of statistically. So I would say it's just about optimizing your health as much as is possible and knowing your cycle, which is what we say all the time.
Until we're blue in the face.
Yeah. Right. Have I got any more for you? I've completely lost my place again now. Okay, Katie, I've got one for you. What is considered normal for ovulation timing each month? My ovulation varies by a week, which then adds extra days to my cycle. Is that normal?
So ovulation timing is going to really, the whole length of your cycle is going to depend on when you ovulate, which it sounds like this person understands that once you ovulate, your luteal phase is going to be about 12 to 14 days in length, and then you would get your period after that. So in terms of it varying, I would say it varying by about a week or so is okay. Often people think that their cycle is irregular if maybe say they had one cycle that was 28 days, then 31 days, then 27 days. That's not actually an irregular cycle. An irregular cycle was when there's more than 8 days variation between each of your cycles. So that would be having a cycle that's 21 days, then 35 days, and then 46 days or something. If it was bouncing around all over the place, then we'd be having a look and being hang on, what's happening there? But to see your cycle have some variation in its length, and by about a week, if it was getting longer than a week, then maybe you'd want to have a look into that. But at this point, from the information that you've given us, I would say that that's all right. So just depending on your ovulation timing is just going to depend on what's happening in your cycle, what's happening for you. Have you been more stressed lately? Has that delayed your ovulation? Have you been ill maybe? That could delay your ovulation. Or for whatever reason, maybe you've ovulated earlier and then your cycle's going to come earlier. So I think that answers that question.
Yeah.
Have you got anything to add?
No. Beautiful answer.
Great. Lovely.
So, and we promise we haven't planted these questions, but somebody has asked, how do you find a reflexologist to support your fertility? And someone has also asked, how do you find an acupuncturist to support your fertility? And I promise,
I think
we didn't ask those questions,
when we got asked. I think I got asked about acupuncture and you got asked about reflexology. So. Yeah.
Do you want to talk about how you find a reflexologist?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I always suggest to people is have a look on the Association of Reflexologists website. So they're going to have anyone that's a member of the association, you'll know that they've been trained properly. They're not just someone that's having you on and being I can just rub your feet and charge you money for it and tell you I'm a reflexologist, because there are people out there that will do that. But if you go to the Association of Reflexologists website, they have a function on there that's find a reflexologist. You just put in your postcode and they'll be able to find someone near you. I assume if you're listening to this podcast, you're looking for fertility reflexology. There is also the Association of Reproductive Reflexologists. So also have a look on their website and see if there's someone near you that is going to be specifically fertility trained. If there's not, go back to the original association website and just contact a few people and ask them if they have fertility training or what their experience has been in treating people with fertility issues, and just have a conversation with them about that ahead of starting treatment with them.
Fab. And we can put up the notes. We could put the link in the show notes.
Lovely, let's do that.
I love saying that. I don't know why, but I love saying that. It makes me sound like I really know what I'm doing. But put it in the show notes.
You do. Put it in the show notes.
Put it in the show notes. So similar for acupuncturists, in that you really want to find somebody who is an acupuncturist who specialises in fertility, if that's what you're looking for support for. I would say that myself and most of the team are trained or are training to be, we are advanced fertility support acupuncturists. We are a network of practitioners who have completed a advanced level diploma. So you know that you will always be in good hands with anybody who's got that qualification. And I will put up a link to that in the show notes. And also for acupuncturists, the British Acupuncture Council is a really good place to start. And, you know, just looking through there. But I would always recommend that you find somebody who's trained further in fertility, because you want someone who's got a good understanding of fertility from a Western medicine point of view, so you can really maximize your treatment and get the most out of it.
Yeah, I totally agree with that on the reflexology end.
Yeah. Also, I don't know about reflexology, but anyone can call themselves an acupuncturist. Can anyone call themselves a reflexologist? Yeah.
It's like bonkers. Yeah,
it's really frustrating.
There's like there's qualifications that you can do that are like half a day online. They're like 40 quid, and it's like, I'm a reflexologist now.
Yeah.
It's like, cool.
Yeah, like a Groupon. Buy a Groupon course.
Yeah, literally. It really winds me up a treat.
Yeah.
I can imagine even more so with acupuncture. You've done many, many years of training to become an acupuncturist.
Yes, it's quite frustrating. Well, Katie, I think we have answered all the questions. Is there anything that we've missed?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think, yeah.
So,
great.
Thank you for being a brilliant co-host for the series one.
Thanks for having me. I love doing it. I really love doing it. I'll come back.
So we are going to do series 2, and I guess it would be good to, if you want to get in contact and let us know of any topics you would like us to cover. I've got some ideas, but obviously this is all about being helpful for people out there. So if there's some topics or areas that you want us to cover, please do get in contact with us and let us know, because we will prepare and be ready for when we come back in the late spring, I guess. And thank you very much for listening and for all your support and getting in touch about the podcast. We really appreciate it. We've been, I think we can say, surprised, Katie?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think surprised when we started this. We didn't know whether anybody would listen. So we are beyond grateful to everybody who has listened and everybody who has got in touch to say that they have found it helpful, because that is why we do it. So thank you for your support.
I mean, it means a lot when people are like, really love the podcast. It's been so helpful. It's like, it's reaching the right people.
Exactly. And hopefully it will just continue to grow, because it seems to be. So we hope it will just continue to grow and continue to be helpful. So until series 2, Katie, I'll say goodbye.
We'll see you soon. Take care.
Bye. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you have learned something helpful about your reproductive health and your fertility. If you would like to find out more information, then please come and join us in our free community on Facebook. We have tons of resources, access to our webinars, we do live Q&As, and it's a chance to connect with other people who are trying to conceive. The link to register is in our show notes, and we hope to see you there.